Hi guys, and welcome tonight to a quiet place of rest and reflection, a space where we can let the weight of the modern world gently drift away. Tonight, our journey takes us back hundreds of years into the heart of the medieval world, exploring what ordinary villagers actually did throughout the course of a normal day. Long before the arrival of modern technology, factories, or bustling metropolises, the lives of these country folk were shaped entirely by the rising of the sun, the turning of the seasons, and the giving of the soil. Together, we will discover how they found sustenance in the fields, built their simple homes, cared for their families, and observed the deeper, quiet rhythms of nature that sustained them through the changing year. As you settle into your bed, let your breathing slow down, and feel the deep, enduring calm of the old world washing over you. The air is incredibly crisp and cool in the hours just before the dawn. You open your eyes to find yourself resting on a mattress filled with sweet, dried straw and wild heather, tucked safely beneath a heavy blanket of coarse, woven wool. Inside the small, timber-framed cottage, the world is wrapped in a deep, comforting shadow. The single shuttered window keeps out the damp morning mist, but you can hear the faint, gentle rustle of the wind passing through the nearby thatched roof. A few feet away, in the center of the hard-packed earthen floor, the remains of the hearth still glow with a soft, reassuring amber light. A thin, delicate ribbon of white wood smoke rises lazily from the dying embers, drifting upward toward the darkened rafters where dried herbs, salted fish, and loops of onions hang to cure in the gentle warmth. Around you, the soft, rhythmic breathing of your family fills the small room, creating a profound sense of safety and quiet companionship. Slowly, you sit up, moving with careful, quiet deliberation so as to not disturb the sleepers beside you. Your bare feet touch the cool, solid earth of the floor, grounding you instantly in the early morning quiet. You reach for your simple linen tunic and wool jerkin, pulling them on to shield your skin from the crisp morning air. Stepping softly toward the heavy wooden door, you lift the latch with a gentle click and step outside into the open air of a sleepy, medieval village. The landscape before you is immense, untouched, and utterly peaceful. A low, rolling mist clings to the long strips of the open fields, obscuring the young green shoots of wheat and barley and making the distant hedgerows look like gentle islands in a sea of white. The air smells wonderfully clean, filled with the scent of damp grass, wood smoke, and the rich, fertile earth. In the distance, the faint, musical chime of the parish church bell begins to ring, its slow, steady tolling echoing softly across the sleeping valley. This is the first bell of the day, a familiar, comforting sound that has measured the lives of the villagers for generations, calling them not to a rushed schedule, but to the natural, unfolding routine of the countryside. As the pale golden rays of the sun begin to crest the eastern hills, the village slowly starts to wake. You hear the soft, tentative crow of a rooster from a neighboring yard, followed moments later by the gentle lowing of cattle in the common pasture. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves of the ancient oak trees that border the village green, causing the dew-heavy branches to whisper against one another in the early light. Behind you, inside the cottage, the small household is beginning to stir. The quiet rustle of straw and the low, sleepy murmurs of voices signal the start of the morning routine. Your mother steps toward the hearth, her hands practiced and calm as she gently places small twigs and dried peat onto the glowing embers. With a few soft, steady breaths, she coaxes a bright, dancing yellow flame back to life, and the crackle of the new fire fills the room with immediate warmth. She sets a heavy iron pot filled with river water and oats over the flames, preparing the simple, nourishing pottage that will sustain the family for the long hours of labor ahead. There is no rush, no frantic energy, time moves differently here, measured simply by the steady progression of the sun across the wide, open sky. You pick up a sturdy wooden bucket, its staves smoothed by years of daily use, and begin to walk slowly down the winding dirt path toward the village well. The earth beneath your feet is damp with morning dew, and the low sun warms the side of your face as you walk. Along the path, other villagers are emerging from their doorways, exchanging soft, muted greetings and nodding in quiet recognition. An old plowman leads his team of heavy oxen toward the communal fields, the massive, gentle beasts moving with a slow, majestic dignity, their breath forming faint plumes of white vapor in the crisp air. These animals are deeply woven into the very fabric of village survival, and the connection between the people, the beasts, and the land is absolute. Reaching the well, you hook your bucket to the long hemp rope, lowering it down into the cool, dark depths of the earth. The splash of the water below is sharp and clean, a refreshing sound that echoes softly up the stone shaft. As you haul the heavy bucket back to the surface, the water is crystal clear and ice-cold, tasting faintly of the deep limestone springs beneath the valley. The morning sun continues its slow, majestic ascent, completely dissolving the low valley mist and bathing the open fields in a warm, buttery light. Carrying the heavy wooden bucket of fresh spring water back to the cottage, you feel the damp earth beneath your feet gradually growing warmer. Inside, the family gathers around the table for a simple morning meal. The wooden bowls are filled with thick, steaming oat pottage, sweetened slightly with a small spoonful of wild honey gathered from the forest hives. Alongside the porridge, your father slices a loaf of dense, dark rye bread that was baked in the communal village oven just days before. The bread is hearty and comforting, tasting of wood smoke and the grain you harvested with your own hands last autumn. There is a comfortable, mindful silence as everyone eats, preserving their energy for the long hours of cooperative labor that lie ahead in the great open fields. Once the meal is finished, you wipe your hands on your wool jerkin and pick up your primary tool for the morning, a heavy iron-headed weeding hook with a long, ashwood handle that has been smoothed to a perfect patina by years of honest labor. Together with your family and neighbors, you step out into the sprawling, unhedged fields that surround the village. The medieval agricultural landscape is divided into immense, elongated strips of land, a brilliant system of shared farming that ensures every family has a share of both the rich bottomland near the stream and the drier soil up on the ridge. As you walk along the grassy box that divide the strips, the young green blades of winter wheat brush softly against your legs, scattering the last of the sparkling morning dew into the air. You find your family's designated strip and kneel down in the soft, dark loam to begin the morning's work. The task is simple yet vital, freeing the young grain from the aggressive grip of wild mustard, thistles, and creeping tares. Working with the weeding hook requires a slow, rhythmic, and deeply meditative focus. You slip the iron hook beneath the root of a stubborn weed, give a gentle tug, and lift it clear of the soil, taking care not to disturb the delicate roots of the growing wheat. The smell of the earth is incredibly rich and intoxicating, a mixture of damp soil, crushed wild herbs, and the faint, sweet scent of nearby clover. The repetitive motion of bending, hooking, and clearing becomes a soothing melody that anchors your mind completely in the present moment. A short distance away, across the wide expanse of the field, the slow and steady rhythm of the spring plowing continues. You pause for a moment, wiping your brow, to watch the village plow team move gracefully down an adjacent strip. It is a magnificent sight that requires the cooperation of several households. For pairs of heavy, powerful oxen pull a massive wooden moldboard plow, their great muscles rippling beneath their smooth hides as they lean into the heavy leather yokes. A young boy walks ahead of the team, singing a low, melodic tune to keep the beasts calm and moving in a straight line, while an experienced plowman holds the stilts of the plow, guiding the iron share deep into the earth to turn over a clean, dark furrow of soil. The deep, tearing sound of the earth being opened up combines with the soft jangle of the iron chains and the heavy, rhythmic panting of the oxen, creating a comforting symphony of old-world industry. The sun is now riding high in the mid-morning sky, and the gentle breeze that cooled the dawn has settled into a warm, pleasant calm. In the sky above, a lone skylark hangs motionless in the brilliant blue, its complex, bubbling song cascading down over the fields like a musical waterfall. The sheer vastness of the countryside is striking. There are no roads, no fences, and no modern boundaries, only the endless rolling hills, the deep green blocks of the Lord's ancient woodland on the horizon, and the quiet, enduring patterns of human cultivation. You return to your weeding with a peaceful heart, your hands moving with an easy, unhurried efficiency that has been passed down from parent to child for hundreds of years. As you work your way down the long strip of land, you find yourself working alongside an elderly neighbor, whose hands are as gnarled and strong as the roots of an old oak tree. Without breaking the rhythm of his hook, he begins to speak in a low, gentle voice, sharing a bit of village wisdom about how the early appearance of the clover blooms indicates a warm and fruitful summer ahead. There is no anxiety about the future in his voice, no modern sense of urgency or rushing toward the next task. The day unfolds exactly as it must, following a timeless cycle of growth and care that has sustained this village through memory and time. By the time you reach the end of the long furrow, the sun is approaching its midday peak, casting short, pooling shadows at the base of the distant hedgerows. Your muscles feel comfortably warm and tired, and your skin is beautifully sun-warmed. In the distance, the parish church bell begins to toll once more, its clear, resonant notes floating lazily across the open landscape to signal the arrival of the noon hour. The plow team slowly comes to a halt, the oxen bowing their massive heads to rest in the shade of a lone willow tree, and the villagers begin to lay down their hooks and spades, naturally converging toward the cooling shade of the field margins to share a well-deserved rest in the golden embrace of the medieval afternoon. The clear, resonant tolling of the midday bell gradually fades across the open landscape, leaving behind a deep, peaceful stillness that signals the start of the afternoon rest. Under the sprawling branches of a massive, ancient oak tree at the edge of the common field, the villagers gather to seek refuge from the high overhead sun. The shade beneath the canopy is remarkably cool, smelling of damp moss, dry bark, and the faint, sweet perfume of wild honeysuckle climbing up the trunk. You lay your heavy weeding hook down in the tall grass, sinking back against the wide, supportive roots of the oak tree. A profound sense of physical relief washes through your muscles as you stretch out your legs on the soft turf, letting the soothing stillness of the medieval countryside wash over you. From a woven linen sack, your sister pulls out the provisions for the midday pause. She shares around a chunk of hard cheese made from the milk of the village ewes, its sharp, savory flavor perfectly complementing the remainder of the dark rye bread. To wash down the simple meal, a earthenware jug of thin small beer is passed from hand to hand. The beverage is cool and refreshing, tasting faintly of malt and wild herbs, providing the vital hydration and nourishment needed to sustain a body accustomed to honest, outdoor labor. There is very little talking during this hour. The community respects the natural heat of the day, allowing their minds and bodies to settle into a quiet, meditative state of rest while the world around them slows its pace. Your gaze drifts outward from the deep shade toward the sun-drenched landscape. The brilliance of the noon sun has turned the vast fields of winter wheat into a shimmering, golden green sea that ripples lazily under the occasional puff of wind. Farther down the slope, near the winding silver ribbon of the brook, the village herd of dairy cattle stands completely motionless in the shallow water, their long tails flicking rhythmically to shoo away the summer flies. A young milkmaid sits on a three-legged stool beneath a willow tree on the bank, her head leaning gently against the trunk as she drifts into a light slumber, her wooden pails resting empty beside her in the grass. The entire valley seems to be taking a long, slow breath, suspending its industry in perfect deference to the midday heat. Inside the shade of the oak, an elderly weaver pulls a small wooden pocket knife and a block of soft willow wood from his tunic. With slow, incredibly precise movements of his calloused thumbs, he begins to whittle a new shuttle for his loom, the rhythmic, soft curling of the pale wood shavings providing a comforting, repetitive sound that acts like a gentle lullaby for the resting villagers. A young child curls up beside him, her head resting heavily against his knee, her eyelids drooping as she watches the smooth blade slide effortlessly through the wood. This intergenerational closeness is the very heartbeat of the village. Every person is tightly woven into the lives of the others, finding absolute safety and identity within the collective warmth of the community. Archaeological and historical studies centuries later will often depict medieval peasant life as a relentless, unceasing grind of brutal labor, but the reality written into the ancient estate records reveals a more balanced truth. The calendar of the Old World was punctuated by numerous feast days, seasonal celebrations, and mandatory periods of rest like this one, ensuring that those who worked the land moved in a sustainable, human-scale rhythm that aligned with the capabilities of the body and the natural turning of the earth. There was a profound wisdom in this slow pace, a recognition that the soil could not be rushed, and neither could the hands that tended it. You feel your own eyelids growing heavy under the comforting influence of the warm breeze and the soothing, rhythmic sound of the whittling knife. You close your eyes, letting your head rest against the rough, sun-warmed bark of the oak tree, drifting comfortably on the pleasant edge of a deep and restorative sleep. The frantic worries of the modern world do not exist in this space. Your life is securely anchored by the absolute predictability of the seasons, the fertility of the soil, and the enduring support of your neighbors. The shadows on the grass have not yet begun their long evening stretch, and the entire medieval valley remains suspended in a golden, peaceful embrace, resting deeply before the cooler hours of the afternoon beckon the village back to its gentle, timeless tasks. The deep stillness of the midday hour gradually begins to shift as the sun commences its slow, majestic descent toward the western woodlands. A refreshing, cool breeze springs up from the river valley, rustling the dense canopy of the ancient oak and bringing the resting villagers back to gentle wakefulness. You open your eyes, feeling completely refreshed by the long, peaceful pause in the shade. Around you, neighbors stretch their limbs, exchange quiet words, and gather their tools with an unhurried, comfortable rhythm. The long, pooling shadows are starting to stretch across the open fields once more, signaling that the fierce heat of the noon hour has broken, leaving behind the perfect, golden light of the late afternoon. Instead of returning to the open wheat strips, your father gestures for you to join him on a trek toward the common woodland at the edge of the manor. This afternoon, the focus shifts from cultivation to gathering, a vital part of the village economy that relies on the natural bounty of the untamed landscape. You shoulder a sturdy hemp rope and follow him down a winding, deeply rutted cart track that has been worn into the earth by generations of village feet. As you walk, the tall hedgerows on either side of the lane are alive with the cheerful chatter of finches and the low, industrious buzz of bumblebees visiting the pink blossoms of wild bramble. The air smells wonderfully sweet, a mixture of drying hay, wild clover, and the rich, damp scent of the forest ahead. Entering the margins of the ancient woodland, the atmosphere changes instantly, wrapping you in a deeply soothing, emerald-tinted shade. The ground here is a soft, springy carpet of moss and centuries of decaying leaves that cushions every step you take, reducing the sound of your passage to a gentle, rhythmic rustle. This forest is a strictly managed resource. Under medieval custom, ordinary villagers hold the right of estover, the legal permission to gather dead wood from the forest floor for fuel and repairs, as well as the right to collect fallen branches using, by hook or by crook. It is a beautiful, sustainable relationship with nature, ensuring the forest is never stripped bare, but instead carefully tended and respected as a living provider. You move slowly through the dapple-lit groves of hazel and beech, your eyes scanning the ground for sturdy, fallen branches of oak and ash that are dry enough to burn cleanly in the cottage hearth. Whenever you find a suitable piece, you break it to length with a satisfying, sharp snap that echoes softly through the quiet woods. Working in the forest is a peaceful, deeply meditative task. The air is cool and damp, carrying the rich, mushroom-like fragrance of deep earth and ancient trees. Every now and then, you pause to listen to the hollow, rhythmic drumming of a woodpecker working high in the canopy, or the soft, distant bubbling of a hidden woodland spring. Time seems to completely dissolve beneath these ancient boughs, leaving you entirely anchored in the serene present. By the time you and your father have gathered 2 large, neatly bound bundles of firewood, the afternoon sun has dropped significantly lower in the sky, casting long, dramatic shafts of golden light through the tree trunks. The forest floor is transformed into a breathtaking grid of light and shadow, illuminating millions of tiny dust motes dancing lazily in the air. You hoist the heavy bundle onto your back, using the hemp rope to secure it across your shoulders. The weight feels solid and reassuring, a tangible guarantee of warmth and comfort for your household during the coming evenings. As you turn back toward the cart track, you notice a thick patch of wild garlic growing near a damp hollow, its white, star-shaped flowers releasing a sharp, savory aroma that promises to flavor the evening pottage. Emerging from the deep shade of the woods, the wide expanse of the village territory opens up before you once again, bathed in the breathtaking, honey-colored glow of the approaching evening. In the distance, the small timber-framed cottages with their golden thatched roofs look incredibly peaceful, clustered tightly around the gray stone tower of the parish church. Thin, delicate ribbons of white wood smoke are already beginning to rise straight up from several chimneys, drifting lazily into the clear, indigo sky like silent beacons of welcome. The day's heavy labor is successfully drawing to a close, and the community is naturally converging back toward the safety and warmth of the hearth, the timeless rhythm of medieval life shifting gently into the quiet, comforting magic of the twilight hours. The honey-colored glow of the late afternoon gently deepens into a rich, velvety orange as the sun sinks further behind the rolling western hills. A comforting, cool evening breeze begins to ripple across the village lanes, carrying the crisp, clean scent of the high pastures and the damp freshness of the approaching twilight. Back at the cottage yard, you drop your heavy bundle of gathered oak and ash branches onto the woodpile with a soft, hollow thud, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment as your shoulders relax. The thin, lazy ribbon of white wood smoke rising from your chimney has grown thicker and darker, signaling that the evening fire has been built up to welcome the family home. You sit down for a brief moment on a smooth wooden bench by the kitchen garden, watching the sky shift from a brilliant amber to pale shades of lavender and violet. Beside you, in the small enclosed plot of earth behind the cottage, your mother is quietly tending to her herbs and vegetables. This garden is her special domain, an essential source of vitamins and medicines that supplements the grain from the open fields. With slow, methodical movements, she uses a small wooden trowel to loosen the earth around a row of thick, leafy cabbages and sweet leeks, her hands moving with the easy familiarity of someone who knows the unique history of every plant in the soil. She pauses to pluck a handful of fresh parsley, sage, and wild thyme, crushing the bruised leaves between her fingers to release a wonderful, savory fragrance that instantly fills the cool evening air. This simple domestic labor is peaceful and steady, a gentle winding down of the day's physical exertion. As the twilight deepens, the first stars of the night begin to pierce the darkening indigo sky, burning with a brilliant, liquid intensity that is entirely untouched by the artificial glare of the modern world. The village parish church bell tolls once more, its slow, measured notes sounding 3 distinct times for the evening Angelus, a beautiful and familiar signal that the time for outdoor labor has officially ended. One by one, the neighboring doors are shut against the damp night air, and the quiet murmurs of families gathering inside create a profound sense of peace and security throughout the community. You stand up, shake the loose bits of dry leaves from your tunic, and step over the threshold of your cottage, closing the heavy oak door behind you to shut out the gathering darkness. Inside, the atmosphere is incredibly warm, cozy, and filled with the comforting glow of the central hearth. The fire crackles merrily, casting long, dancing shadows across the whitewashed mud and wattle walls and illuminating the darkened timber rafters above. The heavy iron pot hanging from the crane is bubbling softly, releasing a rich, mouth-watering aroma of thick oat pottage, forest mushrooms, and the fresh garden herbs that were tossed into the broth just moments before. Your family takes their places around the simple trestle table, sitting on low stools and benches that have been smoothed by decades of daily use. There is an undeniable sense of safety and gratitude as wooden spoons are handed round and the warm, nourishing food is shared equally among everyone present. A deep, contented silence follows the evening meal, broken only by the steady clicking of your sister's wooden knitting needles and the gentle sigh of the wind passing through the thatch overhead. Your father sits close to the firelight, carefully using a sharp awl to repair a broken leather strap on one of the oxen yokes, his movements slow and deliberate in the flickering orange light. The children are already growing heavy-eyed, their small bodies curled up together on the soft straw mattress near the warmth of the hearth, lulled to sleep by the predictable, rhythmic sounds of the household. The absolute cohesion of the family and the village wraps around everyone like a protective blanket, shielding them from the vast, mysterious darkness of the medieval countryside outside. You slide into your own bed of sweet straw and wild heather, pulling the heavy wool blanket up to your chin as the cold night fully settles over the valley. Your mind is wonderfully clear, free from any frantic modern anxieties or clutter, entirely at peace in the quiet reality of this old world. The day's-long journey has come to its natural rest, following a timeless cycle of growth, labor, and quiet reflection that has sustained your ancestors for generations. As your eyes slowly close, you can hear the soft, distant hoot of an owl from the Lord's woodland, and the deep, restorative sleep of the countryside begins to claim the small cottage, waiting silently in the dark for the eventual return of the morning sun. The deep, velvety blackness of the medieval night now holds the entire valley in a state of absolute, breathless serenity. Outside the heavy oak door of the cottage, the stars have multiplied into a brilliant, dense tapestry of silver light that arches majestically over the sleeping village. The rolling hills, the open fields of winter wheat, and the distant Lord's woodland are all enveloped in a profound silence, resting deeply under the cool, protective gaze of the cosmos. Inside the tiny home, the lively yellow flames of the evening have gently subsided, leaving behind a magnificent bed of thick, pulsing crimson coals in the center of the earthen floor. This residual heat radiates outward into the small room, keeping the sharp, damp midnight chill completely at bay. You lie perfectly still on your comfortable mattress of sweet straw and wild heather, feeling the heavy, insulating warmth of the woven wool blanket tucked securely around your shoulders. Your body feels wonderfully relaxed, a luxurious weightlessness spreading through your limbs as your muscles recover from the honest labor of the day, the long hours of weeding in the open fields, the walk along the cart track, and the heavy gathering of wood under the forest canopy. In the darkness, you listen to the comforting, familiar sounds of your household, the soft, rhythmic breathing of your family sleeping nearby, and the occasional, gentle rustle of a mouse nesting safely within the deep thatch overhead. Every few moments, a tiny pocket of trapped resin within the drying oak logs releases a soft, reassuring snap, casting a brief, faint amber glow across the darkened timber rafters. These small, rhythmic sounds act like a gentle anchor for your drifting mind, reinforcing the profound sense of safety and belonging that defines your existence. In this old world, there is no isolation, no frantic pressure of ticking clocks, and no modern anxiety about tomorrow. Your life is securely bound to the predictable turning of the seasons, the fertility of the soil, and the unbreakable commitment of a community that moves together in harmony with the earth. Through the tiny cracks in the window shutter, the faint, silver light of the moon casts a delicate line across the hard-packed floor. Far out in the valley, the lonely, beautiful call of a fox echoes softly across the damp meadows before fading back into the immense quiet of the countryside. The village rests in perfect peace, a quiet sanctuary of human warmth cradled in the vast, loving hands of the natural world. You close your eyes fully, letting go of the very last threads of wakefulness, and surrender completely to a deep, restorative sleep, waiting peacefully in the silent architecture of the night for the first pale gray whispers of the coming dawn. The profound stillness of the midnight hour slowly deepens, moving toward that quiet, sacred space where the night is at its darkest and the world seems to hold its breath. Outside the cottage walls, a gentle, silver frost begins to settle over the long grassy banks and the wooden gates of the village yards, catching the cool light of the high moon. The great open fields, which just hours ago were filled with the rhythmic sounds of oxen and the calls of the plowmen, now sleep beneath a vast, starry sky that has guided the footsteps of humanity since the dawn of time. Inside the small, timber-framed sanctuary, you shift slightly beneath your heavy wool blankets, turning your head toward the soft, familiar warmth of the hearth. The crimson coals have built a protective crust of silver ash around themselves, conserving their deep, glowing heat so that it will last until the morning. The air in the room is beautifully calm, carrying the faint, earthy perfume of the drying herbs overhead, thyme, lavender, and sweet marjoram, blending with the clean, cold scent of the night air that tries to find its way through the cracks of the heavy timber doors. Every member of your household is now deep within the restorative embrace of sleep. Your father's slow, steady breathing matches the natural, unhurried cadence of the ancient valley itself, while beside him, your mother rests with her hands finally stilled after a long day of care and labor. There is an immense, unspoken comfort in this shared closeness. In this medieval world, you are never truly alone. Your survival, your identity, and your daily joy are completely intertwined with the lives of those sleeping beside you and the neighbors who rest in the identical cottages just beyond your hedge. Your thoughts, now light and weightless, drift lazily like the microscopic sparks that occasionally rise from the dying embers. There are no screens to distract your eyes, no distant hum of engines to disrupt the silence, and no frantic schedules waiting for you on the morrow. Tomorrow will bring the same honest, beautiful tasks, tending the green sprouts of wheat, fetching the clear spring water, and walking the ancient paths. It is a life of simple needs and profound certainties, where the earth provides for those who treat it with patience and respect. From high up in the gray stone tower of the dark parish church, the distant owl answers the call of the forest, its soft, rolling hoot a gentle reminder that the wilderness watches over the village with a quiet, familiar grace. The world is exactly as it should be, ordered, peaceful, and balanced. You let out a long, slow, final sigh of contentment, allowing your mind to release its last gentle hold on the conscious world. You sink deeper into the soft, sweet straw of your mattress, enveloped by the absolute safety of your home, and drift away into a dreamless, beautiful slumber that will carry you safely through the remaining hours of the quiet medieval night. The long, dark hours of the midnight watch begin to ease, transitioning into that serene, liminal space where the deepest part of the night subtly prepares for the arrival of the morning. Outside the cottage, a low, thick ground mist begins to rise from the banks of the winding brook, creeping silently across the fallow pasture and wrapping the sleeping sheep in a soft, protective blanket of white. The stars above remain incredibly bright, but their positions have shifted far across the dark ink of the sky, a silent, celestial clock measuring the slow and steady pulse of the sleeping earth. Inside the safety of the timber-framed home, the air remains pleasantly warm and perfectly still. The bed of coals beneath the silver ash pulses with a faint, heartbeat-like glow, casting a soft, amber warmth that embraces the small room. You lie in a state of luxurious comfort on your mattress of straw and heather, your mind perfectly blank and empty of any modern rush or distraction. The gentle, rhythmic breathing of your family continues to rise and fall in the darkness, a comforting human presence that has anchored this little cottage through countless generations. Every element of the village is at rest. The heavy oxen in the common stalls have bowed their massive heads into the sweet hay, the industrious plowshares rest quietly in the corner of the shed, their iron edges catching the pale sliver of moonlight that filters through the shutter. There is a beautiful, holistic balance to this existence, a complete understanding that the body must rest when the sun sets, allowing the spirit to renew itself in absolute alignment with the natural world. The endless, frantic choices of the future do not exist here, there is only the ground beneath you, the shelter around you, and the deep, unconditional security of the family circle. Your eyelids feel incredibly heavy, weighted down by the profound, satisfying exhaustion that only a day of honest, physical labor can bring. As you pull the thick, coarse wool blanket closer to your chin, you feel a deep wave of gratitude for the simple certainties of your life, the dark rye bread in the cupboard, the clean water in the well, and the rich, fertile soil waiting for your hands tomorrow. The quiet of the valley is absolute, a peaceful sanctuary undisturbed by time. With a slow, deep breath, you let yourself sink into the very heart of the sweet straw, surrendering completely to the gentle, rising tide of a deep, dreamless sleep that will carry you safely through the final hours of the beautiful medieval night. The pale, silver light of the moon begins its slow descent behind the western ridges, signaling that the longest watch of the night is finally drawing to its beautiful, natural conclusion. Outside the cottage walls, the air reaches its sharpest, cleanest chill, freezing the delicate morning dew into thousands of tiny, microscopic crystals that coat the wooden fences and the dormant garden soil in a sparkling armor of white. The immense silence of the valley remains unbroken, save for the gentle, rhythmic sighing of the wind as it sweeps down from the high pastures, clearing away the last of the midnight dampness and preparing the earth for a new day. Inside the cozy shelter, the warmth of the hearth remains steady and deeply comforting. The layer of fine white ash has completely covered the glowing coals, preserving a fierce, secret heat at the core of the fireplace that will easily ignite the morning's kindling when the time comes. You lie perfectly still beneath your thick wool coverings, your body floating in a state of absolute, weightless relaxation. The deep, Heavy fatigue that settled into your muscles after the long walk to the woodland has been thoroughly washed away by the long hours of rest, leaving you feeling profoundly restored, grounded, and secure. Every sound within the little timber-framed cottage is a familiar note in a nightly lullaby you have known since childhood. The slow, deep respirations of your parents, the soft rustle of your sister shifting slightly in her bedding, and the comforting warmth of the domestic space all merge into a single, protective shield against the vastness of the outside world. Historical observers from centuries in the future might view this simple life as basic, but in this quiet room, surrounded by the physical fruits of your family's labor and the unconditional support of your community, there is a profound, enviable wealth of peace that satisfies the human spirit completely. A very faint, almost imperceptible change begins to touch the eastern sky, a subtle shifting of the absolute black into a cool, translucent shade of dark indigo. The stars are still burning brightly overhead, but their liquid brilliance is softening, yielding gracefully to the inevitable approach of the dawn. There is no rush to meet the morning, no artificial alarms to shatter the quiet, and no frantic schedules waiting to be kept. The village will wake naturally, moving in perfect synchronization with the rising sun, the calls of the animals, and the ancient, enduring patterns of the countryside. You let your head sink a fraction deeper into the mattress of sweet, fragrant straw, letting out one final, long, and peaceful breath. The security of the old world holds you tightly in its embrace, a timeless sanctuary where the rhythms of human life and the heartbeat of the earth are beautifully joined as one. As you close your eyes for the final hours of deep, restorative rest, you are cradled by the profound knowledge that you are safe, you are warm, and you are exactly where you belong in the quiet, majestic heart of this medieval night. The very first, fragile ribbons of pale gray light begin to thread across the far eastern horizon, gently dissolving the deep indigo of the long night and announcing the arrival of a new dawn. Outside the cottage, the brilliant field of stars begins to soften and fade, leaving behind a pristine sky of cool slate and delicate lavender. The thick ground mist that clung to the winding brook throughout the night begins to swirl and lift lazily, revealing the sparkling, frost-tipped meadows and the quiet, sleeping shapes of the village cattle. The morning air is extraordinarily crisp, carrying the clean, sharp scents of frozen earth, wild sage, and the damp freshness of a world completely renewed by rest. Inside the timber-framed sanctuary, the comforting warmth of the hearth remains unbroken. Beneath the soft blanket of white ash, the hidden core of crimson coals continues to radiate its steady, residual heat, a faithful guardian that has kept the damp morning chill from entering the small room. You stir gently beneath your heavy wool blankets, the deep, luxurious relaxation of the night slowly giving way to a calm, grounded sense of vitality. The profound physical fatigue from the previous days of plowing and wood gathering has vanished entirely, replaced by a clear mind and a body that feels perfectly restored. Around you, the soft, rhythmic breathing of your family remains steady, a beautiful testament to the safety and continuity of your small community. A quiet rustle breaks the stillness near the fireplace as your mother sits up, her practiced movements fluid and silent in the dim light. She steps softly across the hard-packed earthen floor to the hearth, kneeling down to uncover the glowing heart of the fire with a smooth willow stick. She carefully arranges a delicate nest of dried birch bark and fine wood shavings over the heat, leaning low to offer a sequence of gentle, steady breaths. A thin, fragrant spiral of white smoke rises toward the darkened rafters, followed an instant later by a bright, cheerful yellow flame that leaps into life, instantly chasing the remaining shadows from the whitewashed walls. The gentle, familiar crackle of the new fire acts as a silent, comforting beacon for the rest of the household. One by one, your companions begin to stir, shifting within their straw mattresses and stretching their limbs in the warm, dancing firelight. Low, sleepy murmurs of greeting are exchanged, spoken in the soft, melodic tones of a language that feels as natural and organic as the wind rustling through the wheat. Your father sits up and smiles, his eyes reflecting the early flames, while your sister pulls the heavy wool coverlet tighter for one last moment of cozy comfort. There is no urgency to their movements, no modern rush to race against time. The day ahead will unfold with the same patient, human-scale rhythm that has sustained this valley for centuries. You stand up slowly, pulling your wool jerkin close against your chest, and walk toward the heavy oak door. As you lift the latch and step out into the yard, the very first ray of the golden sun bursts over the crest of the eastern hills, casting long, dramatic spears of amber light across the entire medieval landscape. The morning frost on the wooden gates begins to melt into glittering drops of dew, and a lone lark lifts off from a nearby hedgerow, pouring a cascade of joyful song into the vast, bright sky. You take a long, deep, and peaceful breath of the pristine morning air, feeling entirely alive, entirely secure, and beautifully woven into the eternal, living fabric of the earth. The golden morning sun continues its gentle ascent, climbing higher into the cloudless, lavender sky and transforming the early frost into a brilliant, shimmering field of liquid diamonds. Walking down the narrow dirt path of the village lane, your wooden bucket balanced lightly against your hip, you feel the brisk morning air warming rapidly against your skin. The village is now completely awake, humming with a quiet, purposeful energy that feels entirely harmonious and unhurried. Everywhere you look, neighbors are stepping out of their thatched cottages, greeting one another with bright smiles and soft, cheerful words that carry easily across the open spaces. Near the center of the village green, a small group of women has gathered around the communal baking oven, which is already radiating a powerful, mouth-watering heat into the cool air. The dry oak logs burning inside the stone structure crackle merrily, sending up a clean, sweet-smelling smoke that blends beautifully with the aroma of raw dough and wild yeast. They work together with a seamless, rhythmic cooperation, some kneading the heavy mounds of rye and barley flour in large wooden troughs, while others use long-handled wooden paddles to slide the risen loaves deep into the dark, hot cavern of the oven. This daily interaction is the very glue of the neighborhood, a time for sharing news, exchanging gentle laughter, and reaffirming the deep social bonds that ensure no household ever stands alone. You reach the village stream, where the crystal-clear water bubbles playfully over smooth, moss-covered limestone rocks. Bending low on a flat stone, you dip your bucket into the current, watching the cold, pure water swirl and fill the container with a satisfying, heavy splash. As you lift it, you pause for a moment to watch a family of wild ducks glide elegantly through the reeds on the opposite bank, their feathers catching the bright morning light. The sheer purity of the world around you is striking. There are no artificial sounds, no rushing vehicles, and no distant industrial hums, only the timeless symphony of the rushing water, the wind in the willows, and the distant, melodic lowing of the herd. Turning back toward your cottage, you pass the open gate of the blacksmith's forge, where the steady, rhythmic ring of the hammer against the anvil begins to echo through the valley. The smith, a man with arms as sturdy as the oaks he burns for charcoal, nods a silent greeting through the open doorway, his face illuminated by the fierce, magical orange glow of his coal forge. He is carefully shaping a new iron shoe for one of the village oxen, his precise, powerful strokes demonstrating a deep mastery of craft that has been passed down through generations of artisans. It is a comforting, predictable sound that acts as another heartbeat for the community, a reminder of the shared skills and mutual reliance that make village life so resilient. By the time you return to your family's yard, your mother has already set out the morning's fresh bread and a small earthen crock of churned butter on the outdoor table. The physical work of the day, tending the garden, checking the livestock, and preparing the tools for the afternoon, lies ahead, but it is met with a light, peaceful heart. There is an abundance of time in this old world, a deep understanding that everything has its proper season and its proper hour. You sit down on the smooth wooden bench, savoring the simple flavor of the warm bread and the beautiful, golden clarity of the morning, entirely content to be a part of this living, breathing landscape as another beautiful medieval day naturally unfolds. The mid-morning sun now climbs to its full glory, casting a brilliant, golden warmth over the entire medieval valley and drying the last traces of dew from the thatched roofs. With breakfast finished and the water bucket safely delivered to the cottage, the rhythm of the day shifts toward the communal pastures at the edge of the wetlands. Your father hands you a long, polished hazel switch, a traditional tool of the herder, used more for gentle guidance than correction. Today, it is your turn to assist the village herdman in driving the cattle and sheep out to the common lands, a vital task that requires patience, a watchful eye, and a deep understanding of animal behavior. You walk down to the communal stone barns where the livestock are kept during the crisp night hours. The air inside the yard is warm and heavy, thick with the comforting, sweet scents of dry hay, trampled straw, and the rich musk of the herd. As the heavy wooden gates are swung wide with a creaking groan, the animals move forward with a slow, majestic momentum. The dairy cows, their udders heavy with rich morning milk, low softly as they step into the bright sunshine, their hooves clicking rhythmically against the packed stones. Behind them, a dense cloud of woolly sheep surges forward, their high-pitched bleating creating a lively, cheerful chaos that fills the morning air. Leading the herd down the winding lane toward the low meadows is a practice in slow, deliberate patience. There is no forcing the animals, they move at their own natural pace, pausing occasionally to snatch a mouthful of sweet clover from the grassy banks of the hedgerows. You walk along the flank of the herd, using your hazel switch to gently tap the straying yearlings back into the line. The connection between the villagers and their animals is profoundly intimate. Every cow has a name, recognized by the unique shape of her horns or the specific pattern of her patched hide, and they respond calmly to the low, melodic whistles of the herders. As you reach the wide-open expanse of the common pasture, the landscape opens up into a breathtaking sea of deep green grass and wild yellow buttercups. The river loops gracefully through this lowland, its banks lined with ancient, weeping willows whose branches dip softly into the current. Once released into the field, the herd spreads out gracefully, their initial excitement settling into a quiet, industrious grazing. The only sounds left are the steady, rhythmic tearing of grass, the occasional splash of a calf wading into the shallow water, and the gentle, melodic chiming of the brass bells fastened around the necks of the lead ewes. You find a dry, grassy knoll beneath the shade of a solitary hawthorn bush and sit down, resting your chin upon your knees. From this vantage point, the entire village is visible in the distance, a peaceful cluster of timber and thatch, nestled securely against the backdrop of the rolling hills. The sense of space and time here is immense and untroubled. In this quiet corner of the medieval world, you are not a cog in a frantic machine, but an essential thread in a beautiful, living tapestry. As you watch the clouds track slow, silent shadows across the distant hills, a deep, unshakable peace settles over your mind, entirely content to watch over the herd as the golden morning slowly turns toward the quiet fulfillment of the noon. The mid-morning hours gently ripen into the peak of the day, and the sun takes its place at the very crown of the vast, pale blue sky. The gentle breeze that stirred the early morning grass has died down to a soft, warm whisper, leaving the wide valley suspended in a state of golden, sun-drenched tranquility. Out on the common pasture, the cattle have eaten their fill of the sweet clover and now begin to gather in the cooling, dappled shade of the ancient willow trees lining the riverbanks. One by one, the heavy beasts sink gracefully into the deep grass, chewing their cud with a slow, hypnotic regularity that perfectly mirrors the unhurried pace of the medieval world. Leaving the herd under the watchful eye of the older village herder, you make your way toward the shade of a low stone wall that marks the boundary of the meadow. The ancient limestone rocks are warm to the touch, having absorbed the beautiful radiance of the sun all morning. You sit down on a soft cushion of wild thyme and moss, leaning your back against the sturdy, sun-baked stones. From a small linen pouch tied to your belt, you produce a simple wooden flute, a humble instrument carved from a hollowed elder branch during the long winter evenings by the hearth. Bringing the smooth wood to your lips, you play a few soft, tentative notes. The melody is simple and ancient, a traditional tune passed down through generations of country folk, sounding less like a formal song and more like an organic extension of the landscape itself. The clean, clear notes float lazily through the warm air, drifting over the shimmering river and dissolving into the immense quiet of the valley. Nearby, a curious lamb pauses its grazing, tilting its woolly head to listen to the gentle sound before wandering back to its mother. This small creative act brings a profound sense of lightness to your spirit, an expression of complete contentment in the present moment. Across the field, a couple of village children wander along the shallow margins of the stream, their laughter muffled and sweet in the distance as they search for smooth skimming stones and watch the tiny, silvery minnows dart through the reeds. Their movements are entirely unhurried, free from the constraints of artificial schedules or modern anxieties. In this society, children learn the rhythms of the earth simply by living them, playing in the very fields they will one day cultivate, entirely secure in the absolute protection of the wider village family. As you lay the flute back in your lap, the distant, majestic chime of the parish church bell begins to toll, its deep, resonant voice signaling the arrival of the noon hour. The sound carries beautifully across the open country, a timeless acoustic canopy that unites every soul in the valley in a single moment of shared reflection. The long morning of gentle labor and quiet observation has drawn to its natural close, and the world stands poised at the threshold of the restful afternoon. You close your eyes for a brief moment, letting the warm sun bathe your face, completely at peace, completely secure, and deeply rooted in the eternal, resting heart of the land. The deep, resonant tones of the midday bell dissolve into the warm air, leaving behind an incredibly peaceful silence that marks the official arrival of the noon rest. Across the entire valley, all movement comes to a gentle, cooperative halt. The great oxen are unhooked from their plows and led into the shade, where they stand with lowered heads, their heavy breathing slowing in the quiet air. You rise from your seat by the stone wall, stretching your sun-warmed limbs, and walk slowly toward the cooling perimeter of the Lord's ancient orchard, where your family and neighbors are already gathering to escape the highest heat of the day. The shade beneath the mature pear and apple trees is delightfully cool and inviting, smelling of damp earth, sweet bruised bark, and the faint, fresh scent of early summer blossoms. You take your place on the soft grass next to your father, who is leaning back against the thick trunk of an old pear tree with his eyes closed in peaceful reflection. Your sister unties the cloth wrapping of their midday basket, revealing a simple yet deeply satisfying meal, a fresh wedge of pale, crumbly cheese, a handful of crisp wild radishes gathered from the garden plot, and a flask of refreshing, cold whey. There is no frantic rush to consume the food, each bite is taken with a quiet, mindful gratitude for the simple sustenance provided by their shared labor. As you eat, a profound sense of physical and mental stillness settles over the entire gathering. Conversations are spoken in soft, low murmurs, dealing mostly with the gentle observations of the natural world, the way the swallows are flying high in the sky, promising clear weather for the coming days, or how the wild bees are nesting thickly in the southern hedgerows. In this medieval space, there is an absolute absence of modern mental clutter. No one is thinking about distant events, artificial deadlines, or global anxieties. The world is entirely contained within the boundaries of this beautiful, self-sustaining valley, and every heart is anchored in the absolute reality of the immediate present. A few yards away, an old basket weaver uses the quiet hour to work on a large willow pannier, his gnarled, strong fingers weaving the supple green rods together with an easy, mesmerizing fluidness. The repetitive, rhythmic hiss-click of the willow stems sliding against one another creates a soothing, comforting background melody that blends perfectly with the soft drone of the bumblebees in the clover. A couple of toddlers, exhausted from their morning play by the stream, have curled up together in the tall grass at his feet, their small chests rising and falling in deep, restorative sleep, entirely secure under the watchful, loving eyes of the community. You lie back in the lush grass, interlacing your fingers behind your head and looking up through the shifting green canopy of the orchard. The brilliant blue sky above is vast and untroubled, with only a few wisps of white cloud drifting lazily toward the distant hills. Your body feels heavy and pleasantly tired, entering a state of complete, luxurious relaxation as the natural warmth of the afternoon wraps around you like a protective cloak. The shadows beneath the trees are short and pooled, holding the day in a beautiful, suspended balance. You close your eyes, letting yourself drift on the gentle edge of a deep and peaceful afternoon slumber, entirely content in the timeless sanctuary of this old-world rest. The deep, golden stillness of the midday hour gradually begins to turn, as the sun moves past its highest point and commences its slow journey down the western sky. A gentle, cooling breeze slips through the rows of the orchard, rustling the leaves of the apple trees and bringing the sleeping villagers back to peaceful wakefulness. You open your eyes to find the short, pooled shadows beneath the branches beginning to stretch themselves across the grass once more. Around you, neighbors rise with unhurried, comfortable movements, gathering their simple tools and preparing for the distinct tasks of the medieval afternoon. Instead of returning to the open fields or the high pastures, your path today leads you toward the cool, sheltering interior of the village mill, situated down where the river runs swiftest through the valley. You hoist a heavy linen sack of freshly harvested grain onto your shoulder, the rough fabric coarse against your skin, and begin the peaceful walk down the winding river path. The afternoon light is magnificent, painting the entire landscape in rich shades of amber and emerald. Along the banks, the tall reeds whisper softly against one another as the current sweeps by, and the air smells wonderfully clean, filled with the scent of damp moss, water mint, and wet stone. As you approach the mill, the comforting, rhythmic sounds of old-world industry fill the air. The massive wooden water wheel turns with a heavy, majestic slowness, its great paddles scooping up the rushing river water and releasing it in a steady, splashing cascade that sparkles like liquid silver in the sun. Inside the cool, timber-framed building, the atmosphere is calm, dim, and beautifully serene. A fine, delicate mist of pale flower drifts lazily through the sunbeams that pierce the high-shuttered windows, coating the massive oak beams and the stone floor in a soft, snowy white dust. The air is thick with the warm, sweet, and comforting aroma of crushed grain and freshly milled flour. The miller, a cheerful man whose apron and beard are perpetually dusted with white, greets you with a warm nod as you lay your sack down upon the clean wooden floorboards. With practiced, deliberate movements, he pours the golden grain into the great wooden hopper above the millstones. Deep within the heart of the structure, the massive, grooved stones begin to rotate against one another with a low, deep, and resonant hum that vibrates gently through the soles of your feet. It is a profoundly soothing sound, a heavy, steady work-click that seems to synchronize with the very heartbeat of the valley itself, a testament to human ingenuity working in perfect harmony with the natural power of the river. You sit down on a smooth wooden bench near the open doorway, content to wait as your family's grain is slowly transformed into the life-giving flour that will bake their future bread. Looking out from the dim interior, the sun-drenched valley looks incredibly peaceful. The water below the wheel flows back into the main river channel, its surface turning to smooth glass as it winds its way past the distant cottages and under the old stone bridge. There is an absolute lack of urgency in this place. The stones turn only as fast as the river pushes them, and the river flows according to its own timeless, ancient laws. By the time your sack is filled with the warm, soft flour, the afternoon sun has dipped significantly, casting long, dramatic spears of golden light across the water. You tie the mouth of the sack securely with a piece of hemp twine and hoist it back onto your shoulder, feeling a deep, quiet satisfaction in your chest. The primary work of the day is nearly complete, and the village is beginning its natural, evening transition. Walking back toward the cluster of thatched roofs, you look up to see the first delicate plumes of white wood smoke rising into the darkening sky, welcoming you home to the safety, warmth, and enduring peace of the coming twilight.